As you've already heard, ladies and gentlemen, this case is about Sharee Miller manipulating and using her lover to kill her husband, Bruce Miller. Her lover, Jerry Cassidy, used a 20-gauge shotgun to kill Bruce Miller. She used a computer and his emotions to get him to do it. And the story is best told from the end, working back to the beginning. You will hear testimony that on February 11th of the year 2000 in Odessa, Missouri, that Jerry Cassidy surrounded himself with photos and memorabilia of the things that meant the most to him in his life. He sat in a lazy boy overlooking a picture window, overlooking a lake, with photos of his 3 sons, a separate one of his youngest son, Jimmy, his divorce decree from his wife, Barb, his wedding ring, a Bible on his lap, a .22 rifle, and a picture of Sharee Miller. He put the gun in his mouth and he pulled the trigger. In the aftermath of this suicide, his brother arrives on the scene, and they're trying to figure out what went wrong here. Why did Jerry kill himself? And he harkens back to a few months before that, in November. In early November, he had had a discussion with his brother. And he said, if anything happens to me, there'll be a briefcase. And find the briefcase. Then a few days later, when he gets back, he says, I'm back. You don't have to look for the briefcase. And he said, what happened? He said, you don't want to know. You will hear testimony later that it's during that time period that he drives to Michigan and kills Sharee's husband. So while they're trying to piece together what has happened, they find a briefcase under a bed, and there are a series of letters on this briefcase. One of them says, to Mom and Dad. Inside that envelope is a suicide note written to his parents that explains why he did what he did. Jerry explains that he killed himself because he was living with guilt about having killed Bruce Miller. I drove there and killed him. Sharee helped set it up. He believed that he was killing Bruce Miller because Bruce Miller had caused the death of more than one set of babies. Jerry believed that he had impregnated Sharee Miller, and he believed that Bruce Miller had killed those children or had somehow caused her to miscarry. And he went to his grave believing that. So he explains that in the suicide note. So now his family is faced with the dilemma of what to do. They can keep quiet, they can just read that suicide note to themselves and go home and not expose their loved one to all this attention, but they don't. They go to the authorities. They take the briefcase, they take the suicide note. The briefcase is taken to an attorney's office, John O'Connor. That's going to be in Missouri. And they scan it to make sure there isn't anything in there, a bomb. Then they open it up, and there's an instant message in there that details the conspiracy. Bruce Miller is killed between approximately 6:15 and 6:45 on November 8th in the evening. Sharee Miller and Jerry Cassidy are engaging in an instant message conversation in the early morning hours of November 7th, or the late evening hours of November 7th and the early morning hours of November 8th. They detail what he's going to do. They make reference to some photographs at the beginning of the email, and then they talk about meeting at the rest area between Birch Run and Mount Morris. They use local terminology like the point when they discuss directions of how to get to B&D Auto. They talk about having Sharee call her husband, who's going to be at B&D Auto at the time that he's killed, and keeping him on the phone, making sure he's alone. Then she's going to ring him once, and we believe that they exchanged the cell phone at the rest area beforehand. She's going to ring him once, then call him back, and keep Bruce on the line until Jerry can get there and kill him. So the police get this information. They take Jerry's computer. They look into his computer, the items that he's saved. You're going to hear he's a former cop. He's a saver. He saved hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of emails between the two, between Sharee and Jerry. You will get a notebook that has a portion of those emails. There will be gaps in there. It's not going to be a smooth, flowing story. There will be gaps. But what you will be able to discern from these emails that were gathered after Bruce's death and after Jerry's death is the life cycle of their relationship. You'll be able to understand the emotional roller coaster that Jerry was on that led him to kill for Sharee Miller. It starts out rosy. It starts out very intense and hot relationship. You'll hear that Jerry was trying to get his life in order as far as going to Alcoholics Anonymous and whatnot. But as his life is getting in order, Sharee is painting a picture of her life spinning out of control. That she needs his help and she needs his protection, and she can't leave her husband because he might chase her down, and she'll always be worrying about him putting a bullet in her head. So she needs his protection. Now the witnesses that you're going to hear from too are going to be a little bit out of order. We have witnesses who are coming from out of state and to accommodate their schedules too during the Christmas season. So it's not going to come in real smooth, but that in general is what you're going to hear about. And we believe that after you've heard all the evidence, that you will conclude beyond a reasonable doubt that Sharee Miller participated in the conspiracy and in the planned, premeditated murder of her husband, Bruce Miller. And you will hear that the tales that she wove for him, including having a brain-dead husband in a nursing home, which she never had, included so many lies that, and Jerry went to his death believing those lies, believing that he had lost children because of Bruce. She painted Bruce in a totally different way than the actual Bruce was. And once you've heard all the evidence, we're confident that you're going to come back with a verdict of guilty of conspiracy to commit first-degree planned premeditated murder, as well as first-degree murder as an aider and abetter. Thank you.
Good afternoon. We're in afternoon now, ladies and gentlemen. Again, my name is David Nicola. This is my opportunity to tell you my opening statement. I don't have to do one. I could reserve it until later, but I think it's extremely important that you hear where we're coming from on this case. There's a completely different story that you haven't heard up to this point, and I think it's very important that we go through it with a little more detail so it's not so gappy and choppy and going in so unsmooth. Sometimes we hear these words and we think that maybe it's a built-in excuse here, but what we have here, ladies and gentlemen, is my client here, Sharee Miller. Sharee just turned 29 years old. I'm representing her. I'm going to tell you a little bit about her so that you have a little bit more understanding in terms of where we're going to go before we start this case. Now, Sharee was 27 at the time she met Bruce Miller. Bruce was 48 at the time of his death, so there's a pretty good gap in between in terms of their age difference. Sharee had been married several times at a very early age. She's had 3 wonderful children from a prior marriage. Young children, Bobby, Amanda, and Junior, 11 years old, 8 years old, and 5 years old. Bruce also was married several times, 3 times, and he had some adult children as well. But they were in their 20s and whatnot. Now, these two met in 1998, and at the time that they met, Bruce had a very steady girlfriend for about 5 years. Sharee had a live-in boyfriend, and the two of them began to see each other. In all actuality, even though they weren't married, depending on how you define the term affair, that's how their relationship was born, in an affair. Bruce's longtime girlfriend didn't know about Sharee, and Sharee's live-in boyfriend didn't know about Bruce. And that went on for a couple of months until finally each one of them found out about the other. Sharee's live-in boyfriend found out about Bruce and beat her up. Bruce's girlfriend found out about Sharee, and that was it, out of the picture. So once their respective others were gone out of the picture, it was December of 1998. And they shared their first Christmas together. The children were introduced to Bruce. He immediately fell in love with her children, these young children. You'll have an opportunity to see them from some of the evidence that's going to be put forward. Now, these two basically moved in with each other in December of 1998. It's going to be important. You're going to hear the dates, but it's important that you get a kind of a time sequence in terms of what's going on so that we don't just gloss over it. But they basically moved in at that time, and things were hit off great. And you'll hear why they hit off great. Although there was a big age gap, Bruce offered Sharee something she hadn't had before. A man who really respected her and cared for her. And Sharee brought excitement to Bruce's life. They had a lot in common, both of them. Their relationship was very sexual, as a lot of relationships are when they're first developing. But Bruce and Sharee both found that they enjoyed alternative lifestyles. They both enjoyed pornography. You'll see some evidence that Bruce had subscribed to different pornographic magazines and different pornographic mail orders where you could order all sorts of things, sex toys, you name it. And both of them thrived with that, and they liked that. He was older, wasn't hung up on, I have to be powerful over you, or I have to be jealous about other men. And she liked him for that. And they respected each other's desires, and they respected each other's fantasies, and they enjoyed it. As a matter of fact, it was only 4 months later, after they sort of moved in a little bit, that they got married. And that was in April of 1999. As a matter of fact, Bruce loved these children so much that he made an extreme commitment, at least as it relates to Amanda and Junior. Bobby had a different father, and he had a father who was relatively involved in his upbringing. But as it relates to Amanda and Junior, their father wasn't around. He had been abusive to them. As a matter of fact, you'll see from evidence that the prosecutors may introduce that Junior had been harmed very bad by his father. As a matter of fact, he had smashed his head against a wall, nearly killed him. He was brain damaged. And as a result of that, Sharee, before she even met Bruce, got involved as a parent and got involved sort of in a mission about not letting ex-spouses get visitation when they do something horrible and commit a crime, because that man was convicted for what he had done. Then he went to jail, but he wanted suddenly all of a sudden to see his child again after going through that. So she became very committed, and she got involved. She called her Congressman Kildee. She contacted other people, and she contacted the media to tell them, hey, this is not right. This situation where the law allows a parent to see a child, even when they harm them, even when it's a felony, is wrong. Now you may be saying, what does that have to do with all this? Well, you'll see how it ties in during the case, but the reason why it's important is eventually what had happened was Sharee's cause was noticed, and she went and she was on a show, a television show. If you haven't heard of it before, I'm sure most of you have, the Montel Williams show. She was invited there to talk about her problems. She talked about her problems with other women who had had similar circumstances occur. And that's going to be something the prosecutor is going to run for you. They're going to show you the program so that you can see that. For what reason, they'll be able to explain it some later time, but that's going to come, and that's why I wanted to explain that. That's before Bruce. But anyway, Bruce and Sharee hit it off. They had a great time. They went off and had a couple of times in Las Vegas together, lived it up, a wild life. And you'll hear more details about that. But this is not something, wildlife and sexual relationships, that are broadcast across Neon Lights to other family members. This is something that people usually keep quiet, even if it's different. It's not something that they go blabber about. But you'll see. We'll be able to show that to you. Now, Bruce had made a commitment after they were married, and again, for a very short period of time, to adopt Amanda and Junior. And as a matter of fact, we'll find that when Bruce Miller died on November 8th of 1999, just 9 months after they were married, just 9 months after they were married, he was to become the legal father of these two children. They had an attorney, Peter Dorr. You'll hear from him. He'll explain to you how excited he was and how happy they were for this occurrence to happen. And Bruce died just shortly before that would have happened. And that's very important to keep in mind as we go through this, because there are some issues as it relates to motive that you're all going to be able to take into consideration. And it's our position that when you hear all the evidence, both sides, that there's absolutely no motive for her at all to have killed her husband, the man that was going to make her two youngest children their natural father, pursuant to law. Now, what we have is, during the course of their marriage, they purchased a computer and the internet. And Sharee got involved in the internet as well. And both of them did, actually. And you're going to find that an alternative lifestyle or things that you want to find, and some of you may already have, and so I may be preaching to the choir, but you may find, or you might not know, that there are a lot of things that you can get on the internet. Okay? You can get anything you want, as a matter of fact. If you have sexual, bizarre fetishes, you can get any of that there. You name it, you can get it. And you'll see some examples of that. But what happened is, Sharee began to use the computer at night when the kids would go to bed. Bruce worked third shift, and Sharee would open up the shop, the B&D Auto Parts, where they had just a little small junkyard. And what would happen is Bruce would come home from work and go work at the shop. Then he'd come home for dinner and then go back to work. And he would sleep, in the morning time. That was kind of their routine. Sometimes she wouldn't have to open the shop. Sometimes the other workers would. So what would happen is that Sharee, after the kids would go to bed, would get on the internet. And Sharee became addicted to the internet. And I think that you'll hear that people can get addicted to the internet simply because they enjoy either chatting with other people, and you'll hear that you can chat with anyone in the entire planet on the internet by either going through an instant chat message or getting involved in different chat rooms that people may have a specific desire to go into, whether it's friendly or whether it's sports or whether it's sexual or whatever. You can get into that particular thing that interests you. You can meet other people. You have no idea who they are on the other end, but you can talk with them, and you can talk with them like you're your best friend. And Sharee was involved in that. She was involved with that heavily, and I think that that's going to be very clear. Just like millions of other people are. You're going to hear from an AOL representative, and he'll tell you that. As a matter of fact, the internet is a major tool, if not the most major tool in our society as it relates to fantasies. Because there's anything there, you can get it. Whether it's disgusting, whether it's great, whether it's something you show your kids, you pluck it out, you can find it. And the fantasy on the internet is $1 billion empire. And she was a part of it, just like millions of other people are. And when she's on the internet, she meets up with a gentleman by the name of Jerry Cassidy. And that's the person that they're talking about, that her lover, that she plotted with to kill her husband. And you'll see that the communications that these folks have, because they have them in these books that you'll have available to you, is nothing more than a fantasy. The things that they talk about, the relationship they have. And Sharee tells him some things that are absolutely ridiculous. And you'll be able to read them and realize that what they're talking about are ridiculous. That she's living, although at home with the kids as a housewife and her husband, she creates this fantasy where she is the wife of a mafia boss and that she has a lot of money and that they have this empire and that he's involved in racketeering and that her husband beats her. So she's longing for somebody to protect her. But that all gets to Jerry Cassidy, but one thing in particular sticks in his mind. And the one thing that I just described for you was the money. That's what the facts are going to show, what was on his mind. And Jerry Cassidy, you'll see, because you'll be able to read his responses, and his is not somebody who's manipulated, like he's on some string as if they'll have you believe, but he's in control. This former police officer who has a Bachelor of Science in Criminology and who has a Master's of Science in Security Management, he's no pawn. He's no sucker. He's no wimp. He's his own man, and he has his own intentions. And I'll be able to show to you what his intentions are. And what it is that it's Sharee. The money issue for him is what keeps him motivated. Because as we're going through the trial, you'll be asking yourself, Sharee's an attractive girl, but you'll be asking yourself, what's a guy going to want with all these kids and Sharee? And why would he go through all this? Now, I'll show you a couple examples, and you're going to have these, and I want to illustrate it because it's important to know going into this thing. I'm going to read you September 26th of 1999, a portion of what Jerry has sent her. And he says, with your help, I can get my finances in order to cut back on my expenses so I can do more to contribute to my family. No, I'm not asking or suggesting that you pay off my problems, but you have a financial sense that I lack. I'm the first to admit it. I need guidance. You'll hear that Jerry and Sharee are talking about, well, let's run away together. Let's leave Bruce. He's beating me. Let's just run away together. But every time Jerry really gets to the point where it's like, okay, it's time to go, she always says, no, something else has come up. Something else has come up. And you're going to see when you read these emails and when you hear these emails for what they're worth, she's always putting them off because she has no intention of it. No intention at all of leaving her husband. I think that you'll find when you see these emails how ridiculous they look. And I think that you can see how much of a fantasy they really are. I'll read you an excerpt in September of 1999 from Jerry. You, my love, are my angel. God put you in my life for a reason. God sent you to me, and he did so for a reason. He's giving me a second chance on love, a second chance on life. I won't let him down. I won't. I know you've always said that. Why you? Now I know after the things you told me, it has all come clear to me now. Once you finally told me the truth and all of it, it makes it so clear. He matched us together. He knows we are good for each other. He knows I needed someone who could stand by me, help me, encourage me, support me, give me inspiration. You need someone to show you what true love is all about, to care for, support you, to love you, to understand you, to give you the tender, gentle love that you've never had. Baby, I'm that man. I love you dearly. I need you. I have to have you. We will be together forever. It will happen, and it will happen soon. Another very close to that one. Listen, my love, I want to assure you a couple of things. Our lives are about to be enriched to the fullest. We are about to embark on a journey no one has ever known. We are soon to be one, now not just for a few days, but for eternity. We both have chosen to leave the life we know behind and venture into this endeavor together, heart to heart, side by side. We will take on something we never have ever experienced. We will seek out the unknown. We will live a life like no one has ever experienced, very much in love with each other. No other mortal man can ever have had what I have had with you. You would believe the prosecutor would read that. You would think that he's very much in love. But, ladies and gentlemen, we also got his hard drive. Hard drive, you're going to hear something in the computer. And either you save things, or you can simply just bring them up an email, and it's there. It goes into your hard drive. Can't fake it. Sometimes you can. You're going to hear testimony that about anything's possible on the computer. If you don't already know it, you're going to hear testimony from experts concerning that. Anything is possible on the computer. But I read that letter to you for a specific reason, to show you something. Because at that time, September 1999, when no other mortal man could ever live like that, we were able to find that Jerry Cassidy was on the internet with other women. How about just a day later, he was on there with Sweet and Sexy, and he's talking to her. Hi, sweetie, the night was long, I thought about you. How'd you sleep? Wish you were here to keep me warm. Something tells me you could do that. So Dina, what is this spell you've cast over me? How have you managed to overcome my thoughts the way you have? Will we ever meet? Will I ever see you? Hope to talk with you soon. Hope to see you. Thinking of you, Jerry. Same day, she writes back, I thought a lot about you and that nice fantasy you described. Would like to talk to you some more, Jerry. We'll be around 11 or so, 8 o'clock your time. XXX. There's a lot of examples of that, and you're going to see them, ladies and gentlemen. When we talk about being manipulated, you're going to see lots of examples. Some of the examples you're going to see are that Jerry's got a lot of women on the side. He's a real Casanova. And we'll be able to show it to you real clear, because out of his computer are downloads and downloads and downloads of other women other than Sharee. Young, old, underage. You'll find that these are photographs of women who want to meet and other people who I've described who get on the internet and kind of can carouse if they want. But it goes on and on and on. Normal people. Women who are wearing wedding rings. It goes on and on. And there's more. Before, during, and after this homicide. And you'll see more examples of it. You're going to see he was not manipulated at all. He was the one manipulating. Sending out his picture, his photograph to other women. Sending his photograph from the camera of his computer. You're going to hear he was very proficient in using a computer. Photographs that are taken just a few short weeks after Bruce Miller's death. You'll be able to see him, see whether he looks like he committed a homicide. You'll be able to see some more of the glamorous talk that he gives Sharee during the course of this. Now, we find out a few things more about Mr. Cassidy that are important, because this money issue, you will see how it flows with what he's up to. He wants to see the money. He's a liar. You will hear him lie to his own mother that he came up here for a hospital stay because she lost the baby. That was a part of her fantasy, that she was pregnant. And you'll see where exactly how this fantasy goes back and forth. And she's got to make excuses to keep Jerry around, because the things he says are nice. And it's every day. She's receiving more and more compliments. And it's more, like I read to you, how lovely you are, how my whole life is for you. And you'll see how reasonable it is that who doesn't want to hear that? Who doesn't want to hear that? But you'll see the fantasy of it all. He's an alcoholic. He's been an alcoholic before Sharee, but he couldn't stop drinking right on through up until the time of his death. When she says AA, there'll be no proof that he was voraciously attending anything. He was a drug abuser. He had, as his own family will tell you, severe psychological problems. He had no job. In October of 1999, where he was when they originally met was out in Reno, Nevada. He was a pit boss. He had moved after leaving the police force. He had moved out and was working for Harris, and that's where they met up, physically met up as well. And right during the best part of their relationship, at the peak of the relationship, if you read into these emails, one night he got drunk, went to a casino, tried to steal or scam his way through getting some money, and he got caught. A struggle ensued. He was charged assaulting people, drunk driving. He had attorney's fees, bills piling up, and Sharee, you'll hear, went out there along with family members. Sort of an intervention, if you know what that means, where people come together and say, hey, try and get you off booze, try and get you out of that situation. And what happened was, Jerry moved back in the middle of October of 1999, back to Kansas City to be with his family. She's trying to help him. Close to his family, away from booze, away from drugs, didn't work. He wouldn't stop. But he wouldn't go back to work. He had no money and his bills were piling up. He had criminal charges, and Sharee was his only hope. And you're going to hear more emails. I already talked to you about the one where he's talking about you can help me get my finances back in order. Well, there's other ones too, where they have this fantasy about getting together. I know we can cut back on the way we live temporarily, downsize, but we will get by. Your lawsuit is up and running. They have already made an offer. They will honor that. They will never go less than that. And no, they will probably go more. That's a hell of a lot of money. That will get you and your kids a fresh start. Buy your house. Get you on your feet again. Part of her fantasy was as well that she had a civil lawsuit. They'd offered $300,000. And he thought that she had that money already. And he's encouraging her to leave. And you're going to hear in the emails that she actually on several occasions says, well, we're getting back together. Things are working out with my husband and I think that we're going to be getting back together, and he's going to go into some counseling, and you'll read the emails where he is absolutely upset. He's angry. He gets on the line and says things, how can you go back to him the way he treats you? That son of a gun, this, that, and the other, using horrible language. Attempting to talk her out of reconciliation with her husband. At one point, he asks her for a car, and she gets upset. And one of his emails back to her is, I'm trying to figure out a way to make you happy. I don't want anything from you. I don't want the damn car. You don't owe me anything. That is not the point. I was just looking for a way to make us happy. That asshole can say he's getting help, but he can try, but things never change. Never, never, never. That's his way of life. That's him. All of this because I asked for a fucking car? That's bullshit. I'm sorry I ever brought it up. I wasn't doing it to get something from you. I was trying to make things to where we could live and enjoy life like you know damn well we can. At one point, Sharee even says, okay, I'll run away with you. Tomorrow. With just the kids and nothing else. And you'll see the email on October 23rd, just a few short weeks before Bruce Miller was killed, where he puts, wait. No, you can't come down here. You don't have your money in line yet. Yesterday you finally told me that you would get out of there. It turned out to be the happiest day of my life. I finally convinced you that I could and would take care of you. I finally got the commitment. You explained some things to me that caused me concerns that have to be planned out. Today, I feel everything you said yesterday was just to make me feel better and shut me up. When I ask you questions, you are vague and unclear. When I make suggestions, you tell me they won't work, and it can't be done. I don't know what that fucking piece of shit did to you since we talked, but obviously he did something. Every time he does, you do this to me. We talked about selling your stocks, getting the money, getting you out of there with everything you could while he wasn't there. Today you say you can't take anything but the kids' things. That you are getting what you can, but you won't tell me what it is. How can I plan if I don't know what we have to work with?
Are you wanting to buy a house, rent for now, work, not work? How much do you think you can get? Will you have a car, 2 cars? Honey, I don't care about the money or property, not one bit, but I need to know what to do to take care of you and your babies. I love you with all my heart and will do everything I can to take care of you, but I can't do it blindly. Later on, he says in the letter, but there are things that we have to get done. You have to liquidate what you can if you plan on just leaving with a few things. It will take time to get your checks from your stocks. I know that. You'll see other communications where she's obviously talking with him about him being stressed out about his money. She sends him one. He finally gets a check because he hasn't been working. He won't get up and go get a job. He's sitting in a basement of a short-tail relative's house with a computer all day, all night, going out drinking at night, not paying his bills. His truck gets repossessed. All of this when he's totally manipulated by her. You're going to hear some other things about Mr. Cassidy as well, that in the height of this love, that he thinks that she's carrying his babies and he loves her, he's sending out photographs that he had of her. He's sending them out across the internet to dozens and dozens and dozens of other people. Why? Because he is pretending that's him with other women. He engages in sex chat as if he were a bisexual or lesbian to other women. All this time that he's supposedly totally manipulated by her. Right up to the time of the murder and after. And we'll be able to show you that. It's surprising, we'll find, what you can get in an email or what you can get out of a hard drive of somebody's computer because they don't know you're in there. Some other things we found very disturbing. Things where he's downloading other men, downloading gay chats, before, during, and after he's with my client. Devious sexual things, bondage. All of this when he's so in love. So in love. One of the things that's very important to keep in mind. One of the things that you'll see is that when Bruce died on November 8th, 1999, so did the fantasy. You'll hear that Bruce knew and was involved in fantasies on the internet himself with other women. And that for them, it was a turn on, something that they thought was exciting. And you'll hear that you can use your common day experience about how that works with people and what they want to do. But Jerry, his fantasy about the money was no longer there. He wouldn't stop drinking. He wouldn't stop lying. And what happened is he became bitter and hostile and vengeful towards her. And you're going to see a portion of a sex tape that she sent way back in August. And these other photographs. And he needs money now. You'll hear that his truck got repossessed in the end of November of 1999. You'll hear that he says, hey, I need this money. I've got to have some money. I don't have a truck. Everything is going downhill. She doesn't have any money. He thinks she's a loaded widow now. She doesn't have any money. She's got to go through the procedures and whatnot. And they weren't big time money people anyway. She can't give him any money. So he becomes more hostile, more aggressive. Finally, without even any notice, he jumps on a plane and flies up here in December. Says, you marry me right now. She says, are you kidding me? I'm going to marry you. You can't control your alcohol. You can't control this. I'm going to bring you in with my 3 young kids to my house with you all drunked up. No. Then he tells her, well, listen, I need money now. And actually threatens her. He'll turn over the videotapes. Threatens her that he'll turn over these pictures, even though she doesn't know he sent them to half the people in the world in sex chats, pretending it was him. Everything Once his bubbles burst, everything is Sharee's fault after that. So it's his fault. Sharee's fault that he's an alcoholic, even though he's been an alcoholic for years. Sharee's fault that he's a drug abuser, even though he's done that for years. It's Sharee's fault that he lost his car and it got repoed. It's Sharee's fault that he lost his job. It's Sharee's fault that he won't even look for a job. It's Sharee's fault that he lost his family, got a divorce way before they ever met. Finally, his own short-tailed relatives are like, hey, you gotta go. You're not paying bills, you're mooching off us, it's time to move on. And he commits suicide. Kills himself. But one thing that's clear when you see that suicide note, all the hostility in life, all the hostility he has, everything is her fault. No responsibility whatsoever for his problems. All these problems were predating her, but because his money and his big scheme doesn't work out, he's got nothing to fall back. You're gonna see this suicide note. Ex-cop, smart, computer literate. No details whatsoever. Not one detail in this trial from Jerry Cassidy telling you how he did it. He just says, I killed him. I killed him. She helped. And you're gonna hear the suicide note. It wasn't laying next to him when he died. It was put away with other things, well prepared. We don't even have a date on that note. But it was well plotted out. And in his suicide note, he tells people, I'm killing myself and I'm going out in life and this is the reason why. Because of her. I'm sending all the proof to the police. Nothing was sent to the police. Nothing at all. She says that here we are. Family has to make this choice. Well, he says he sent it to the police. There's no officers will come in here and testify that they ever received any details from Jerry Cassidy, that there was anything ever sent to an officer. The gun? Where's the gun? You'll find out that Bruce lost his wallet. Bruce Miller's wallet was missing when he was killed. He supposedly drives 700 miles, nearly 13 hours up here to do it. Nothing. But he says all the proof. One thing, come up here and he does it. And you're going to hear from an expert that this thing is absolutely subject to complete manipulation and fabrication. And you're going to see that a lot of the things that are even in there are things that don't make any sense and never happened. You're going to see and you're going to hear that anybody with any mild degree of computer knowledge can put one of these things together. You'll see that this is what a chat looks like. You'll see the chat that they claim was there. And you'll see how easy it is to simply put this thing in your computer or save it onto disk and change it around and add. You'll hear from an expert from me, Paul Elby. He started a chat just like they claim they did. Put it back into a disk, pushed a button, comes out Sharee and Jerry. Totally manipulated. You're going to even see that you can change it any way you want. And in fact, he substitutes Jerry Cassidy's name here for one of the professor, or Vice Petrovka, who was the investigator in charge in this case. It's that easy. And that's it. On their end. But I'll tell you something. One of the most important things to keep in mind is we still have the emails. And we will show you an email 1 week after supposedly this guy comes up to this community and commits a murder. 1 week. He sends her an email supposedly accomplishing their life goals 1 week after the homicide. Somehow, some way, I begin to fail to show you how much I love you. How can I possibly tell you how sorry I am for letting you down? 1 week after the homicide. He doesn't know that's going to be in there. We were able to get that out of his hard drive. Now, There's another thing to keep in mind here, and that's what happened after the fact. There were a couple of police officers involved in this case, one in particular, who was an officer in charge of the investigation. Right now, Detective Shanlin's in charge of the investigation, but originally it was Ives Petrovka. He was in charge of the investigation. And what had happened is that the officers got around and basically some of them said, hey, the wife did it. They always do it. Check her. Petrovka interviewed her several times, spent several hours with her. He's a seasoned detective. He went over it with her. And it was his opinion that she's not the one we're looking for. Not at all. Well, once they got just this suicide note, ah, told you so. Told you so. He was very upset. And what happened was, you're going to see an investigation where they go down to talk to the Cassidy family, Jerry's family, and they're grieving because their brother committed suicide. But what you're going to see is, these officers go down there and contaminate this family. You'll hear from the officers themselves how they'll testify that it's very important in an investigation. Again, we're talking about a murder investigation where you keep people preserved and independent and know, what do you know? Don't come together. Separate witnesses. Find out what they know. Don't give your opinion as an officer. Don't say things as an officer to people that might contaminate them to see whether or not they'll be hateful or incite some kind of anger towards them. They'll tell you that. But that's because they forgot that when they went down there to these police officers, they met with the Cassidy family during their interviews, tape-recorded interviews. These officers are telling us, hey, she's a liar. This Sharee Miller, she's good at what she does. Had me fooled. Yeah, we were arguing up there amongst the guys. Yeah, she fooled me. She's real good. We've got a lot of gaps on this case to fill. Fill in the gaps. She's very good. Telling the family, again, for the first time that they meet him, while they're all sitting together. We're not going to say anything bad about Jerry. We're not going to put a bad light on him. We feel Sharee is the problem. Sharee is the whole problem here. You'll hear from their own words if that's not right. They had forgot they did that. You'll hear the officers telling the family, oh, he's a caring person. She played on his emotions. So you know what? Thanks to them, thanks to their contamination of that family, they all believe, absolutely believe, because this independent law agency that you would think would be independent has totally contaminated them. They completely believe she's 100% the sole reason for his death. Again, even though he had these problems years before. And we'll find that he was suicidal back when he was still living in Reno, when their relationship was going great. Now, we have a killer, ladies and gentlemen, in this case. We have a killer in this case. I'll tell you something. Not my client. We hear about this. But you'll hear about it from me. The real killer is, ladies and gentlemen, is John Hutchinson. That's who the real killer is. You're going to hear John Hutchinson is the guy who had business dealings with Bruce Miller at the junkyard. What John Hutchinson would do was he would change titles on cars that were junked. You get in a car accident, your car gets totaled, can't drive anymore, not supposed to. Fix it up a little bit, change the title, turn around and sell it for $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, $10,000 to somebody. Perfect scam. You change the title, no big deal. The only problem is, one problem, that if you go out and take that car that you got ripped off on and get in an accident, try and get replacement parts, they might start matching serial numbers. And that 1996 Firebird you bought is really 1995, even though the title says 96. The tag, the VIN tag. And that's what was going on out of B&D. John Hutchinson was bringing cars and switching tags. And what happened, and again, the murder is on November 8th of 1999. What happened was there was an investigation, GAIN. That's an acronym for the Genesee Auto Theft Investigative Network. That's an agency here in Genesee County that specifically focuses on stuff like this and stealing cars for the entire county. An investigation started on John Hutchinson, and guess where the vehicle was? The vehicle was at B&D Auto Parts. And B&D Auto Parts was under investigation, and so was Bruce Miller. and will find that on November 3rd, just a few days before the murder, Detective Steelman, who's one of the detectives for Game, came out to B&D, left a police report, left a card, and said, I want Bruce to call me. This has to do with John Hutchinson. He walked out in the back of the lot. Sharee was there, said, go ahead. She gave him some information. He walked back out there and found the title, found the real car, because somebody got in an accident. They went out to El Cerro or whatever the dealership they went to, and it was not even a 1996 car, it was a 95. And John Hutchinson was facing some serious prison time. Serious prison time. Not only that, he owed Bruce a couple $1,000s, and Bruce had called the day he found out the police were there. Called his wife and complained. Was upset that this investigation, because of him, is bringing the heat down on his business. Because if he does something wrong, he loses the business. And this was his dream, to retire out of GM and run this business. Bruce wanted his money, and he was upset. He wanted to talk to John. That day, Bruce Miller died. That night. And when Bruce Miller died, the evidence of John Hutchinson, gone. He found himself free with no prison, free with no jail. And you'll hear why. His own family told the police they believed he did it. Hutchinson's own family members told the police at the outset of this investigation that he was the guy they suspected, and that he even admitted it. His own stepson thought that John Hutchinson was a killer who he lived with. Hutchinson lied to the police. I was with my stepson the whole time. His stepson says, no. Right during the murder that she wants to tell you happened between 6:15 and 6:45, he was gone. And he only lived a short distance away. And then his own stepson said, yeah, he may have done it. The way he was acting that night on November 8th. How was he acting? He told his stepson, I'll pay you some money. You get over and tell my brother, Harold Hutchinson, to call me right now. He's paying him to go get Harold to call him. Very important. And Harold Hutchinson. They went out and interviewed Harold Hutchinson, Detective Shanlon, the next morning. None of this had hit the news. The next morning, and when Detective Shanlon walked up to him, he knew why Detective Shanlon was there. They talked about it, they had an interview, and John Hutchinson's own brother, Harold Hutchinson, had said, he called me last night and disposed of Bruce Miller because of this gain problem. Again, the investigation. And the money he owed him. You're going to hear testimony that everybody who knew Bruce knew he carried a couple $1,000s cash, always, up to $5,000 of cash. And John Hutchinson knew that as well. Not only does he wipe out the thousands of dollars he owes, he gains thousands of dollars, and he wipes out prison. His own brother also told Detective Shanlon that a week before the death, he called him and told him, I'm going to kill him. And he was the primary suspect in this investigation. He was the one that the police knew and believed committed this crime. And it was not until a suicide note pops up that they just locked it up and stopped the investigation and never gave him another look. And due to lack of evidence, the Genesee County Prosecutor's Office dropped the felony charges and mapped it all under the rug. No jail time for John Hutchinson, no prison time, little misdemeanor instead of the felonies. And interestingly enough, the day after the murder, the yard was broken into. And you'll hear that investigator Petrovka went out there. Funny, nobody really wanted to get into the B&D Auto Parts too much, but the footsteps in the snow went back to where the cars were. I never checked why. I never looked at the other titles out there. All of a sudden, titles are missing on cars. The evidence of all the other VIN number changings were gone. Nice and clean. There are two reasons, ladies and gentlemen, in this case why my client's not guilty. 2 reasons. And I know I've been long, but it's important. And if this case doesn't signify why we keep an open mind after what you just heard, then no other case does. But 2 reasons why my client's not guilty. Number 1, they cannot prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt because they have no physical evidence whatsoever. People are changing their stories, and they'll change their stories from what they've testified to, except for the suicide note that just says, I did it, nothing else, and this fake I am instant message chat that he put together. And she didn't do it. Those are the 2 reasons. And when you hear all the evidence, folks, we'll come back and talk again and recap it. But it's important that you know what's the evidence is going to be coming. So now you'll keep an open mind. It's easy to say, but now you've heard some things where you think the defense is going to at least bring forward to you so that you know about it. But remember something. Remember what's important about what is brought to you and what's not brought to you when you talk about a case like this. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to ask for a verdict of not guilty when we're conclusion of this trial. I think that you'll find, for the 2 reasons I just cited, that that is the most logical and reasonable decision to make. I thank you for your time and your patience.